Did you know that we have between 70 and 80,000 thoughts per day? Between 70 and 80,000 thoughts per day. And 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts that we had the day before, and the day before, and the month before, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. So what does that tell you? That tells you that we're living in the past. So if you don't interrupt your thought pattern where you keep going back to your childhood and what your parents did wrong or what your ancestors did wrong, you're never ever going to make a change in your life. And we know from neuroplasticity that you can change, you can rewire your brain, you can have a new life, you can have a new future if you decide to make different choices.
Welcome to Mindful Mondays, your weekly dose of mindfulness, holistic wellness, and conscious leadership. Today, I'm joined by someone I've loved for so many years. I used to watch her on my screens almost every Thursday. I think that's when Strictly Come Dancing was. But today, I am joined by Zuraida Jardine, who is a trailblazer in the broadcasting industry, but now in the wellness space. She pivoted from broadcasting to wellness, Can I say that?
Yes,
wellness,
absolutely.
Holistic wellness, and you are the embodiment of Mindful Mondays, so I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to be celebrating you too.
Oh, thank you so much. I just want to start with asking, how are you today?
Powerful question, right? We answer that so automatically. I'm fine. How am I? I am in a week of great excitement. I am launching my digital program, my wellness digital program on breathwork. So things are coming to fruition this week and it feels good. So how am I? I am excited. Thank you for asking.
I love that. And the reason I ask, how are you today? Like you said, a lot of us have this thing where when we asked how we are, the automatic thing is to say, I'm fine. Yeah. But I also feel like we live in such a fast-paced world that expects us to say that we're fine because anything else makes us feel really uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what this conversation, I guess, is about, and all the conversations that we've had before actually jumping on screen is about stillness, is about awareness, is about understanding not only you, but your journey and the incredible work that you do. So thank you again for joining us. I'm curious. So the first time I interacted with you was, well, not directly, but was on my screen. You were on Strictly Come Dancing, you are a TV presenter, you're a broadcaster on so many different stations, and you have become a household name. You had become such a household name in South Africa associated with entertainment. And then you take this big pivot into wellness. What changed? What happened?
Wow, what happened? So if I think about it, it was a pattern interruption that happened. You know, you were speaking earlier on about how we automatically say, I'm fine. And it's just a pattern that we keep doing. But when we do the pattern interruption, it means we pivot to do something differently. So for me, it was a pattern interruption. Broadcasting was something that I always wanted to do as a kid. But when I think about it, it was something that I was doing because I was trying to cope. I was trying to cope with lots of abandonment issues. I lost my dad when I was 13 years old. He passed of a heart attack in front of me, and I immediately went out and found a part-time job. And by the time I was in matric, I was paying for my own school fees, for my own school uniform. So there was all the survival mechanism that had been going on for the longest time that was perceived as achievement and success. But deep down, there was still this nagging question of, why do I not feel full? And I realized it was because my inner world wasn't running as deeply as my external world. So even though on paper it looked like I was successful, deep down I felt there was still this emptiness. And so I became aware of it, somehow through the journey of my life. And I interrupted that pattern. And I went, what really matters to me right now? And at the time, what really mattered was becoming aware of my generational trauma, becoming aware of where my ancestors come from and what they went through. And most importantly, I knew that I wanted to be a mother. And I thought, if I were to have the privilege of being a parent and a caretaker, what would that look like? And even though I know my parents were doing the best they could with what they had, I wanted my journey to be more intentional, more purposeful, more present, more aware. And that's where it started. And so I kind of resigned from television and radio, and I actually left South Africa at the height of my career. I just want Strictly Come Dancing. And you know, when something big happens, there's so much power in the spill-off of that, right? You get more work, you get more popular. There's just so much more to do. And I left at the height of all of that and moved to America and became a waitress. Wow. So I interrupted the pattern of my life for a depth, and I've been on this journey ever since, and will be for the rest of my life. And that's what's so beautiful about going in, because when you go in, there is no end. You just learn more about yourself.
It sounds like a process of detachment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because to leave everything and then you move to become a waitress, one question I want to ask you is, were you scared? And that detachment, not only for yourself, but what did the world look like after you detached?
So was I scared? Absolutely. But when you are in survival mode, and I realized, like from a nervous system point of view, when my dad died and how I, framed his passing, because my dad died on a Tuesday, and on a Wednesday I was sent to school. No one, and he died in front of me. No one said to me, Zoraida, how are you feeling? Zoraida, do you want to go to school tomorrow? There was no process, there was no counseling. It was just life goes on. And life did go on. And so my nervous system as a kid was wired for survival. It was wired to go, 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 go. So when I left the broadcasting industry and I became a waitress, it was like, I'm used to struggle. It's okay. It's like I can do anything. I can be anywhere and I could make it happen. I knew that I had that resilience and grit inside of me. So yes, I was fearful, but I did it anyway. The difference now is that when I feel the fear, I'm so much more aware of the fear. And it's not that it's more calculated, but it's a decision that goes, the fear or faith is both in the future, and what do I choose for myself at the moment? Because fear and failure have, they've got more, or fear and faith rather, have more in common than the two F's. Mm-hmm. They're both future-based, which means there's going to be anxiety with both of them, but what are you going to choose? So now I intentionally choose faith because I want to thrive, as opposed to choosing fear because I want to survive. Mm. So it hits differently.
It does, because I've been looking at life in the way of you're constantly presented with choices with every single thing that you do. Yeah. Even if you're picking a drink in the morning, it's a choice. And when we choose, I guess, fear, because sometimes you need to lean into the fear in order to have the future that you want. And I completely understand you in the sense of you're taught to survive, right? But it doesn't change the fact that you've built this world, this cushion of safety, and then you leave it when you seem or people think you're thriving in order to actually thrive. But to start over again, despite the fear of abandonment and having to survive your entire life, I think that middle, a lot of people go through, I guess, that middle of okay, fine, I'm leaving it all and I'm pivoting, but do I really have the privilege of pivoting? Yeah. How do you rise above, I guess, that middle, and how do you transition even when you are a waitress? I'm sure most people would be do they know who she is, because I get that a lot because of the pivot that I've made, but it's almost like people didn't know how you felt. They only knew what was on the outside. Yeah. But that middle of transitioning from, okay, yes, you did the waitressing thing, but what happens after? What are the thoughts that are going through your mind? Yeah.
For me, and that's such a lovely acknowledgement. For me, it was realizing that so much of who I was at the time, like being on the cover of magazines or being the first female to host a daytime radio show on 5FM or breaking generational or color barriers, was so wonderful, and I really do appreciate that. But I also realized that a lot of my acknowledgement was coming from the outside. It was coming from how well I was received or how many opportunities I got, and I wanted to feel good about myself without the likes, so to speak, without the views, so to speak. And so that step into being a waitress, it was interesting because when I moved to America, I was doing some work with Top Billing. And so during the day, sometimes I'd go and interview, Ryan Gosling or Sir Anthony Hopkins or one of these big celebrities. And then at night, I'd see them at the same functions and I'd be offering them, a plate of like risotto balls to eat. And they wouldn't recognize that that was the same journalist that interviewed me a few hours earlier. So there was this dichotomy of my life. But it was so profound in how it made me settle into what's superficial and what's real. And what's real is who you are when no one's watching. And so that became and still is my journey. Like, how do I find the alignment between how I'm perceived and living a life not fearing other people's opinions? And it's just been so deliciously liberating.
I love that. And we were speaking about age. How old were you when you pivoted?
I was in my so it was around 27. I was about 27 years old when I realized that I was on a hamster wheel. Because I started working at the age of 13 and I'd never stopped working. The longest break I had was my honeymoon, where we went away for 10 days and I came back immediately and started working again. And I started going through burnout and I realized that it can't continue anymore. So I resigned from radio and television and we went on this, my husband and I went on this sabbatical to the States. So I was like in my late 20s, early 30s when this happened. So my journey of realizing that as wonderful as the show and the performance is with all of this, what was more important was going, okay, what's your next step? And for me, my next step was really wanting to be a conscious caregiver and a conscious parent. I was also angry, Shudu. I was angry because I felt like my parents weren't there for me when I was younger. I was angry because I was, comparing myself to other people's highlight reel or even my husband's family. He had this really solid, grounded family and I didn't have that. And I knew that couldn't continue. I couldn't go back into the past, but what I could do was change the future. So I could change the experience that my kids would get to have as a family unit. And so that became what I've been living for, is like, how do I become the example?
And please tell us about the work of consciousness and neuroscience and understanding your mind and the different things that you went through in order to be a conscious parent. And I know we touched on the generational trauma and how when we don't address it, it just keeps going and going, especially for people of color, in the sense that we taught to survive that we don't even see the fact that we are a traumatized generation.
Yeah.
We don't even see the trauma, we don't recognize it. We just think that things are the way that they are. But to make the decision to say, not with my kids.
Yes.
How do I become a better version of myself, not only for them, but for me?
Yeah.
And I guess in going through that journey, I mean, you were married at the time, and still are. But how do you also become someone that your husband can still recognize, because it's the shedding, I call it shedding, but like the shedding of the old skin into like stepping into this new journey of yours and into becoming the woman that you are right now.
Yeah.
Means people won't recognize the person that you were.
Yeah.
And people who may have fallen in love with you because of the person that you were, because in my experience with generational trauma, we become people pleasers without even realizing. And then in journeying into consciousness, you realize that, things like boundaries actually exist. Things like pouring from a full cup instead of an empty one is actually something that we need to do.
Yeah.
How did that journey unfold? What was the work, and how did you get to this point?
So it would be unfair of me to say that my husband didn't play a role in all of this. In fact, my husband was probably the biggest catalyst in me reflecting on my behavior or me reflecting on my triggers. Before my husband and I got married, he said we should go for premarital therapy. And I was like, what is that? And he was like, well, we come from different backgrounds. It's really healthy to go into therapy, because he'd been going for therapy. White people do therapy, people of color don't. So I was like, okay, cool, let's try this. And we went for premarital counseling. And it was so powerful for me, because I have always been a person that intuitively feels. I feel stuff. I feel energy. I feel everything in the most acute way. But being able to talk about it and then consolidate that information and integrate that information was mind-blowing for me. And he introduced me to that. He introduced me to the concept of therapy and talking about your feelings and knowing that even in a disagreement, you can still be okay with someone. You don't have to not speak to them or ignore them, that you can put in boundaries and still be healthy. These were all different concepts for me because I came from something different where there was a lot of emotional blackmail or walking on eggshells or that kind of thing. So he was a catalyst in my journey of transformation. So when you speak of like how did that shift in our relationship, because there were layers that were coming off me, that's who he is by nature. And so it's been, obviously we've been walking on I wouldn't say the same path, but a like-minded path ever since we met, which is like 23 years ago. So we're very different people, but we have the same viewpoint of where we want to go to, and that is ultimately being good people who understand ourselves in relation to others.
And that journey into consciousness then while he's there, and obviously being the catalyst, but also supporting you through it. What did that confrontation with yourself look like now that the work is starting? What work did you do? Because right now you work in the wellness space, you are teaching others to be more conscious and to practice holistic wellness. What did that journey of you getting to a point where you feel like you can pour into others the lessons that you've learned look like?
Yeah. So living in Los Angeles was amazing because the thing about LA and America, we were talking earlier on about just how confident Americans are, that they're actually so delusional that they just make all their dreams come true. Living in LA definitely gave me that feeling of courageousness to be anything and to do anything. But what was a catalyst there for me was I joined a space called Kundalini Yoga, and I befriended the owner of the studio, and I was still very set in my whining ways of why me and why is this happening to me. And she taught me the power of reframing my thoughts. And she taught me the power of understanding my nervous system, like understanding there's a parasympathetic nervous system where you are in a state of calm and digest, and then there's the sympathetic nervous system where you are fighting and you are freezing and you are, fleeing all the time. And so she started this journey of my realization that actually there's biology and science to the way I'm feeling. And so when I came back to South Africa, because I believe that I'm a spiritual person by nature, I wanted to be able to bridge the science with the soulfulness. And that's why I started studying, because I wanted to understand, why do we think the way we do? Why do we feel the way we do? When we put boundaries up, what does that feel like? And what's happening in the nervous system or the brain when we say no? So when we say no, and we're not used to say no, because we're a people pleaser, what happens is your amygdala, that's your fight or flight response, starts activating. It's an alarm system going, what are you doing? This is not familiar. You don't say no, you people please. And then cortisol starts running through your body. But when you understand the science behind all of that, you go, okay, I see the drama queen, the amygdala coming up right now, but I'm going to activate my prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that is essentially your CEO, your rationalization, your place where you make powerful, good, healthy decisions. You switch it to that mode. And once you switch it to that mode, your breath starts calming down and you go, okay, I can say no because this doesn't serve me, because I need to fill my cup up, and that's okay. No is okay. And then you understand the science, the biology, the physiology that's running through your body whilst you're feeling what you're feeling and whilst you're thinking what you're thinking.
Oh, I love that, because my therapist has tried for years. Boundaries are so difficult, especially if you've had a traumatic childhood, if you've had abandonment issues. And I think the beauty of the mind is that it adapts when we allow it to. And there's times where we think, oh, no, I'm too old to learn. Where they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's not true. I've learned that that's not true. But I constantly find that in all that awareness, we also have the old us constantly chiming in to say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then there's the guilt where you can be aware and all the information, but how do you actually put it into practice? Because, you know, like you're saying all these terms, what do you call it? The
amygdala.
The amygdala. I love that
The
word.
drama queen.
The drama queen. Let's call her the drama queen. But you're aware of this information and you're learning this information, but how do you put it into practice where I believe that the inner child is one of the most powerful beings there is within us. And in the consciousness that we have when we're older, in the books that we read, we're talking about all these books that we've read, how do the two come together in conversation?
Shula, let me say this. The greatest gift you will ever work on, the greatest project you will ever work on is yourself. And so to answer that question, I really honestly do believe that it comes with intention and the desire to want to know how you work. We know how our phones work, we know how Netflix works, we know what's happening in our best friends' lives, in our neighbors' lives, we know the gossip of the biggest celebrities in the world, but how much do we know with what's happening between our 2 ears? That 1.5 kilograms of what is the most powerful machine that we possess. So few of us actually make the time to understand our brains. And once you do that, once you intentionally decide, I'm going to learn to get to know myself. I'm going to learn why I think the way I think. And then I'm not going to stay in the why too much because the why is the past, right? I'm going to future pace. I'm going to make different decisions based on where I want to be in the future. So I know that I usually think this way, and I'm going to interrupt that thought because I know that going to the past doesn't serve me. Did you know that we have between 70 and 80,000 thoughts per day? Between 70 and 80,000 thoughts per day. And 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts that we had the day before, and the day before, and the month before, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. So what does that tell you? That tells you that we're living in the past. So if you don't interrupt your thought pattern where you keep going back to your childhood and what your parents did wrong or what your ancestors did wrong, you're never, ever going to make a change in your life. And we know from neuroplasticity that you can change, you can rewire your brain, you can have a new life, you can have a new future if you decide to make different choices. So to answer your question, do it with intention. Say to yourself, if there's only 3 parts of the brain or myself that I get to understand, I'm going to understand my amygdala, which is the fear center. And I know that the amygdala is there to protect me because when I think about my caveman days, it was either eat or be eaten. So I'm on high alert by nature all the time. That's how we're wired. We're on high alert all the time. So when something feels good or something's new and unfamiliar, you can't handle it. You're like, okay, what's going to go wrong? When is it going to go wrong? Or like, I need fixing now because something feels right all of a sudden. You need to rewire and reframe. You need to go to the front of your brain where you make rational decisions and you make a different choice. So you think differently. You go, okay, I understand that this feels unfamiliar right now, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that my body is used to being in fight or flight mode, or my body's used to feeling like I am not significant or I'm stupid or I don't get things right. But I'm going to reframe that right now because that's not the truth. In this present moment, that's not the truth. So you reframe and you make a different choice. And when you make different choices, you're going to have different chemicals that are going to flow through your body. So instead of cortisol pumping through your body, you're going to have the beautiful bliss chemicals of serotonin and dopamine and all those feel-good chemicals. And then you make different choices. So the way we think is going to result in the way what we believe, and what we believe is going to result in the way we act. So if you want to act in a different way, you need to start thinking in a different way. You need to start making different choices. So that inner child that you speak of is so powerful because she lives inside of us wherever we go. And I do a lot of inner child meditations and visualizations, and they're so powerful because sometimes we forget that she's still inside there and that she may still be trying to survive or to run. And we've got to go to her and calm her down and say, it's okay, I know you had that, but I got you now. I'm gonna be there for you. I'm gonna celebrate you when you need to be celebrated. And when you need to be cared for, I'm gonna be there for you. You're not alone anymore. And you do that with the way you think, with the way you feel, and the way you show up. And that's all gonna come from this one thing, and that's getting still. It's getting mindful on a Monday and on every other day. Because mindfulness really is the mirror that you're avoiding. And when you pick that mirror up and you stare and you don't run, but you face yourself, magic can happen. And that kind of magic is what's sitting in these two chairs right now. It's you and I. It's taking what we had and it's choosing a different future.
There's so many interesting things that you said there. Stillness, we're going to get to that because stillness has been the big change in my life. But you touched on making the conscious decision to think differently and also the conversations with the inner child. And I can attest to the fact that it works because I had to get to a point where even just falling asleep, people struggle to fall asleep. But I've started having conversations with my inner child to say, listen, it's okay. You did good today. You can rest. You don't need to think about anything else. You did your best. But those conversations are so important with the inner child because we forget that it's there, but we are adults who behave in a way that speaks to our inner child and the fears that the inner child has, which is something that I've found. But something that was interesting that my therapist said was, you're not still enough to hear God or yourself. So sometimes we go because we don't want to be still, because being still is scary. That mirror that you're saying we must put in front of ourselves every single day to become better people, make better choices, is difficult to put in front of ourselves because the world is so fast-paced. Social media, the tablets that we have, the work that we need to do. A lot of people are existing in a state of survival and not thriving because they've been conditioned in that way.
Yeah.
And here comes mindfulness that says, be still. But being still enough to hear yourself is probably one of the scariest things that a lot of us can go through because who am I? You know, what am I about? Why do I behave the way that I do? The choices that I make, why do I make them in that way? But that means confronting so many parts of yourself and in a way where you don't stay in the past. But some people confront themselves, but they stay and dwell in what went wrong, what happened to them, instead of what can happen to them should they make different decisions. So to those that are skeptical about stillness, who've tried stillness, but still feel, I think, a little bit afraid of what may come from it, what do you say to those people? Like, what does that journey look like into understanding that, okay, it may be scary at first, but once you get to the other side, this is what happens?
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite lines from the Bible is, be still and know that I am God. I think it's so powerful because there is so much power and demons and dragons and magic and blooming and flourishing in stillness. And if you can just stay there for a moment and not run and actually get to know who were you, who are you before you had all these belief systems put onto you. Like getting into stillness really is returning to who you are meant to be. And for the skeptics, you know, I always say, we charge our phones every night, right? But how often do we charge our brains? We don't ever do that. And some people may argue, when I go to sleep, I'm charging my brain. But how many people are struggling to have a sound sleep throughout the night, like for 6 or 8 hours? People struggle. Yeah. So there's not enough of a recharge. It's like putting your charger into your phone and then taking it out, putting it in, taking it out. It's not going to get fully charged if you don't give it uninterrupted time. And that's what stillness does. It almost recharges your brain in a way that putting a charger into your phone would. Also, if you think about the digestive system, it happens automatically, right? Because when we're not eating, we're digesting the food that we eat. But if we were to eat 24/7, your body would not get the opportunity to digest your food. The same works with your brain. If you're not going to offer your brain stillness, a moment to integrate what's happened, a moment to integrate the learnings, the memories, the discomfort, then how do you learn? How do you iterate? How do you make changes? You can only make that if you give yourself that permission to get still. And here's what I say, try it. And it's going to be uncomfortable. getting still is so uncomfortable. It is not easy because all you have is yourself. You've got no distractions. And it's not about, the thing about stillness is it's not about switching off. It's about tuning in.
Please explain that.
So when you switch off, you go, okay, I'm going to switch off. I'm not going to be on my social media right now. Maybe I'm going to do a Netflix and chill. But you're still distracting. You're still, the brain's still wiring, the nervous system's still firing. But when you go quiet, when you actually decide to get still, and you go, okay, I'm going to become aware of my thoughts right now without judgment. So when I start thinking about a past memory, I'm not going to overanalyze it, because when you overanalyze, we know analysis paralysis. You then just go down a vortex and a spiral. But I'm going to become aware of the thoughts that come up when I get still, and I'm just going to let it pass by like a cloud. I'm not going to go into it. And when feelings come up in my body, I'm going to go, okay, I'm feeling, like right now as I sit here, I'm feeling a lot of stuff in my chest. And the reason I'm feeling it in my chest is because I'm excited to be here. There's cortisol pumping through my body, but I'm not fleeing from a lion. Yeah. I'm not trying to survive. I'm actually excited to be talking to you. Like, this is great. I'm speaking about my dream work. I'm loving your energy and your podcast. So it's all good feelings. So I'm feeling a lot in the upper part of my body. It's just a recognition of what you are going through and tuning into that. That's how you get to know who you are. And you get to know, oh, okay. We say stuff like, I don't want to do this or that because it's just how I'm wired. If you want a new experience, then you need to rewire yourself. We have got to be greater than our environment if we truly want to thrive. So the thing is, we're never going to be able to control other people. We're never, ever going to be able to control nature or the way others say things or do things. All we can ever do is control ourselves. We can control our thoughts by knowing, okay, this pessimistic, negative thought is coming into my head right now, but I'm going to reframe it by asking myself, is it true? Simple stuff. Like you just speak to yourself, like we were saying earlier on, like you're Delulu. You just have these conversations with yourself all the time. And you integrate the information and you get to know what's real and what's not, what's fear and what's faith. And always choose faith. Always choose faith.
You know, we never ask ourselves, is it true?
Yeah.
Sometimes you magnify these dark thoughts. Yeah. I feel like we say the most negative things about ourselves, even though we can pour positivity into the world. And what I found with stillness is that it's a journey. You think, that's why I was asking for the clarification between tuning out and tuning in. I found that with stillness, I thought I was being still, and I realized that I wasn't, because for me, stillness was, okay, I'm not going to be on social media as much. Yeah. Stillness is,
it's still external.
Yeah, it's so external. Yeah. And then there's also there's a process that my therapist was telling me about, which is stillness and then surrender. Surrendering to the stillness. And I would think that I'm surrendering. And you made, I love the scripture, be still and know that I'm God. I think the issue is we think we're being still and we don't allow, I would say, God or the greater power, whatever you believe in, to actually do its work and actually speak to us and have conversations with us. Because what would happen is I'd be still, and then in my stillness, I'd still want to control different things around me. So my brain is still working at 100 kilometers an hour, and I'm wondering why I just still don't feel like I'm getting it all together. And then silence in itself would make me feel so uncomfortable. So I'd get very fidgety, like, I don't have control over this, I haven't done this. In stillness, I think about all the things that could go wrong instead of all the things that could go right. And I think it was in the moment where I just allowed myself to do nothing. Like to not control anything. Yes, things feel like they're falling apart around me, but I just need to sit and just allow and trust that it will work out for my good. Yeah. There are certain people who don't believe that things will work out for their good, so they don't have, or they believe that they don't have the privilege of being still enough because they have so many things that they need to take care of. Yeah. And that is a valid experience for so many people. But there's something that happens after surrender in understanding that, okay, I don't have control over everything. Yeah. And that's okay.
It's okay.
And I can't control the outcomes. I can only do my best, and that's okay. But then in that is the constant anxiety and feeling like, oh my God, if I don't do this, then this is going to happen. What practices in that middle between choosing to be still, staying still, and actually surrendering to being still, can they practice in order to actually fully embrace the stillness? Because you try, it's almost like meditation, you know. They tell you be still, and then you close your eyes and you try to do all these things, but you are hearing the noise outside.
You're responding to the email.
You're responding to the email in your head. Oh, I didn't respond to that last week. Yeah. What is that middle, again, looking like? Because I find that with mindfulness, sometimes it feels like it's so unattainable, you know. Yeah. We speak about these concepts and they sound great, but a lot of people don't know how to put it into practice, because it's like, Zoreda, have you really considered what I'm going through, you know? Yeah. What if I have a completely different experience to you? I have to take care of this, I have to take care of that. I don't really have time to do any of these things that you're saying. What do you say to those people? Because I think the whole point for me, like you and I, we've had different experiences, you know? We live in a duality of understanding what it is to have and what it is to not have. What do you say to those people who feel like I don't have the same privilege of being still that anyone else might have, because this is what I'm going through in my life?
Yeah. So first of all, let me say, you know, and I think it's so important when we speak about anxiety and depression and loneliness, that we can never fully understand what someone else is going through. You know, someone else's journey truly is unique to their blueprint and personality and character and temperament. However, having said that, my passion in my life is a concept called mental fitness. And mental fitness really is about putting the tools into practice so that you develop mental flexibility, mental strength, mental agility to be able to bounce back, to bounce forward, in the same way we do with physical fitness. So we don't wait for a heart attack to happen before we decide to work out, right? Yeah. We don't. We move, we go to the gym, whatever movement it is that you do, dance, Pilates, yoga, doesn't matter. You do that proactively. But yet when it comes to mental health, it's always only when we have a breakdown that we start seeking counseling or therapy, or it's because something went wrong. And I believe that if we start from school level, from primary school, from the home, from the time you are born, if we start speaking about mental fitness and you start going, this is how you build your mental fitness. You build your mental fitness through breath work, through understanding, where's my breathing at right now? Am I breathing from my chest, or am I breathing from deep down in my belly and I'm feeling relaxed? Like and you don't have to analyze it. It's just the acknowledgement of understanding where you're breathing from at the moment. Or you speak about reframing thoughts. So you teach people how to, when you have a negative thought that comes into your mind, to ask yourself, is this true, or is this just one scenario? That's a part of mental fitness. Visualization is another thing. The brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what's not. So I'm sure you've heard the saying, whatever you believe is true. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Because your brain doesn't know the difference. It has been scientifically proven that your brain doesn't know the difference between what is right and what is wrong. So if you visualize yourself being healthy, or you visualize yourself being productive or proactive or happy or healthy, that has a neurological alignment to the way you're feeling, to the chemicals that are being released in your body. So these are all active steps that you take, whether it is breath work, visualization, meditation, prayer, cognitive reframing. These are all mental fitness reps that you put in place, the same way we do when we do cardio, or when we do Pilates, or when we do strength training. If you put these tools in place and then you start habit stacking them, which means you attach them to something you do every day. So for me, for example, I wake up in the morning at 5 o'clock and I have my cup of coffee, and immediately after my cup of coffee, I go into my meditation. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes. It's what I can manage, but it's become a habit. It's almost like the coffee goes together with the meditation and the breath work. And then I also, at that time, visualize. I future pace. I go, what do I want to feel like when I return to this pillow tonight? How do I want my day to have gone? Because what I'm doing now is I'm mentally rehearsing my day. I'm putting into place the things that are going to happen in that day and how I want to feel about them. So I'm being proactive. When you can put mental fitness tools into your day, then you will develop the skills to be able to become flexible, because it's not about being calm all the time or not being triggered all the time. It's about learning how to respond to a situation, not react. So when we react, it's filled with emotion. When we respond, we are responding from our higher version of ourselves, where we go, okay, this has happened, it doesn't feel good, but I have no control over it. So I have a choice right now. Am I going to stay and linger in the fact that I wasn't invited to that party, or that I've been blue-ticked, or I've been red-buttoned, or am I going to move on? We always have a choice, and that choice is your mental fitness. It is what you decide to do proactively. So for me, I really think that in school, for example, and it was, it's just been not too long ago was Mental Health Teen Week, and I was speaking at quite a few schools. I really believe that instead of us having like assemblies that we do announcements all the time, why don't we have breathwork sessions? Before we write an exam, why doesn't the teacher speak about, okay, guys, let's do a quick 2-minute visualization. Like, think about how you want to feel as you write your paper. Think about what's going to happen if you come across a question that stumps you. Are you going to go into fight or flight mode? Or are you going to move on and have a relaxed breath through that? If we can just keep teaching these tools, we can develop mental fitness in the same way we do physical fitness. And then it's not about always being cool, calm, and collected. It's just about knowing how to respond to a situation, because life is going to life.
Yeah.
Life's going to happen. You're not always going to get your way. Things are not always going to go well. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to be rejected. It's about how you respond to it, how you bounce back.
I love the fact that you actually have a training regime and attaching it to something practical, because I think almost like, I look at it like dieting. Like, it's not going to work if it's not part of your everyday. If it's not part of something that you can easily access, it's not going to work. And I've always been a big advocate of integrating mental health education and mental wellness into the schooling curriculum, because there's so many things that we don't know. Like, I remember writing an exam and just looking at the question, freezing. And then the rest of the paper after that is done, because for that one moment, I just went blank. And I think when we think about breathwork specifically, every time I do breathwork, I realize I haven't been breathing.
Yeah. And you pause.
Yeah, you pause.
Often we are not breathing.
No.
So we're doing this all the time. If you think about school, like, we're going to school, and physical education is such a big part of our curriculum. The hockey, netball, rugby, soccer, you name it. How much mental education are we doing? Nothing. That's a problem.
And then we're shocked when, like, even some of the best athletes, or like, you're 30 years old and you still don't know how to get out of a pickle of like feeling the way that you're feeling.
Because you don't know how to cope. You've never learned the tools. But we know what a bicep curl looks like. We know what a box jump looks like, but we don't know how to be proactive with our minds. So to answer your question, what do you do? How do you make it relatable and attainable and actionable? By being proactive. Last night is such a typical example. I was trying to fall asleep, and my daughter was brushing her teeth whilst listening to a manifestation podcast. So that was her little habit stacking. While she was brushing her teeth, she was listening to a manifestation podcast. And she's learning that because she sees me doing that. She sees, kids do what they see. They don't do what they're told to do, right? So I smiled when I heard that happening. I heard an electric toothbrush going on with this manifestation podcast, and she's learning the mental fitness tools because she sees me doing it.
But is it not beautiful for you because you pivoted in order to make sure that they could grow up like that?
It is so heartwarming. My heart wants to burst. Like I and my ancestors' wildest dreams come true with the shifts that I'm making in my... And I know I'm not going to get it right because she complains about me all the time too. But I know that I'm planting seeds, that my kids are healthy seeds, that my kids are going to water when they're ready. And that's just beautiful for me.
And did you celebrate that win? To say that I took this big leap of faith just to see that moment.
I did. I was, like I said, I was smiling when I heard that. She was listening. The podcast was talking about, exams and how to see yourself, how to visualize the exam and visualize the questions that are going to come through. She's in the middle of exams at the moment. And it was a proud moment. It was such a proud moment because I made the shift. When you drop that domino, we just never know what can unfold. And that's why it's so powerful. I think it was Mahatma Gandhi that said, be the change you want to see. The change has got to start with you. We blame other people way too much. We blame our past way too much. We blame our colleagues, our bosses, our family members, our parents way too much, our partners. It's like it all starts with you. Take responsibility and be the change you want to see. And that's what I do that every single day, and it's going to be a lifelong journey. I know that it's never ever going to stop because I am reminding myself and rewiring my brain and rewiring my nervous system every single day, because by nature my nervous system and my brain is wired for fear and abandonment. So it's a practice.
I think a lot of us, for example, I'm a student as well. I run a business, I do this, and it's a lot where I feel like I actually just don't have time. So I've like now developed that before I go to sleep, because I struggle to sleep because I'm thinking about everything else that I haven't done. Yeah. Before I go to sleep, I have the conversations with myself. I try to breathe. Obviously, practices like keeping your phone away from you. For the listener at home, what does habit stacking, like a practical habit stacking tool, look like? And also, what practices can you share with them that they can use at home?
So you have to, I can only tell you what works for me. So it starts with knowing what is, and I love the word ritual as opposed to goal, because a goal always feels like it's out there, whereas a ritual means I do it all the time. So a ritual is brushing your teeth. What is a ritual in your life aside from brushing your teeth?
A ritual in my life is a matcha.
A matcha. Do you have a matcha daily? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you can go, when I have my matcha, I'm not going to be on my phone when I have it. I'm going to take a moment to sip my matcha with my eyes closed, and I'm going to go in. So you take what you do daily and you pair it with a new habit that will, over time, compound. And before you know it, it becomes second nature. The only reason something becomes second nature is because we keep doing it. So, you know, if you think about kids and you think about teaching them to tie their shoelaces, you teach them to do it, and then you don't even have to think about tying your shoelaces. You just do it because it's muscle memory. The same thing happens with mental fitness and with agility and flexibility, because once again, life is going to life. It's not about being perfect. It's just about being flexible. Knowing, okay, I'm here right now. I reacted. Let me come back to myself. We think about it way too much in terms of perfection. And I think social media, plays a big role in perfection. It doesn't have to be perfection. In fact, transformation, Shudi, is so messy. Transformation is not sexy. It is not polished. It is not perfect. It is messy. But it is the greatest journey you will go on. The greatest. Your journey of your self-development is the greatest journey. It is the energetic trademark you leave in the world.
I love that, because it's, again, through stillness that you get to that point to spend time with yourself. A lot of us can't spend time with ourselves. And I started doing that recently, and it's been the most beautiful journey because, to be honest, I'm realizing that I enjoy my own company. Yeah. So what happens is, even when I'm around other people, because I'm so content with myself, obviously there's still a lot of work to do, but learning about yourself, learning about the things that your body needs. There's times where I've lived in a constant state of fight or flight. They call it like the orange. I'm between orange and red most of the time. But I've realized that when I do breathwork, like even if it's like the 4-8-7 breathing?
4-7-8, yeah.
Yeah, 4-7-8 breathing. It helps. Even if I just do it 4 times with my anxiety, I calm down. Yeah. But also reframing what failure looks like to me and the conversations that I have with myself. And now it's not about, even with my abandonment issues, I don't really worry about the abandonment in that way anymore, because the journey of self and self-discovery is also the journey of realizing that you're self-sufficient. Yeah. Yes, we are relational beings, but with my boundaries, if someone is not matching those and disturbing that journey or infringing on that journey, I can take a step back, because it's not about being liked anymore. It's not about being validated anymore. My goals have changed, because again, the thing about constantly seeking outside validation is that you don't really, it's noise. You stop hearing yourself.
It's temporary.
Yes, temporary as well, but the journey of self-discovery, like you're saying, the journey of mental fitness is such an incredible one, because it teaches you how to be relational but also with boundaries and protecting yourself.
Yeah.
But in protecting yourself and respecting yourself, you get to pour out and respect other people and their boundaries in the same way. Because there are people with boundaries that don't respect other people's boundaries, because how can you say no to me as well? So I like the habit stacking, because there's so much chaos right now. It feels like the world honestly is on fire, and some people are just wanting to take a step back to say, how can I breathe? But it's about priorities, I think, as well, the things we prioritize.
I think, I did a webinar recently and someone said, but I don't have time to do breath work and meditation. And I said to the person, you've got to be on your list. Even if you are last on your list, you've got to be on your list. So if you are the last thing you attend to at the end of the day, just be on that list. Be on that list. Put yourself there. Another thing I'd love to just respond to, you were speaking about failure. We've also got to reframe failure, because failure really is feedback. If we don't navigate failure, how do we know how to do something right the next time around? How do we become aware of that? So even that reframe of that word, going, it didn't go so well today, I got some feedback. And feedback can be just the way you feel, so that the next time around you iterate, you do things differently. I had this realization very recently, a few months ago actually. I thought to myself, if I was gifted with the opportunity of someone saying to me, Zoreda, we're going to change back time, we're going to go back in time, and where your father's not going to get a heart attack and your father's not going to die and you're not going to go through the survival mechanism that you went through as a kid where you were an adult child. Would you take it? And my answer is no. And it was a big thing, because it was like, I'm okay with my dad having gone. But here's the thing, is that I wouldn't be who I am today had my dad not passed and had I not had that journey. And I love who I am today. I love who I'm becoming. I love myself. I love my flaws. I love my curiosity. I love that I'm afraid and then I do it anyway. And none of that would be had my life been different. And so it's about choice. It's not about what happened to you. It's always going to be about, what are you going to do about what you were dealt? And I love how I've managed my life. And we have the opportunity to change direction in any given moment. I have two philosophies that I live by, which is, you're not a tree, move. If you're unhappy, move. But sometimes we can't move, right? Sometimes we can't leave a relationship or a situation or a job because we just can't. Simply, the alignment is not there at the moment. The moment's not there. Then grow where you planted. So you're not a tree, move, or grow where you planted. Either way, it means I'm going to go in, I'm going to reflect on myself, and I'm going to become really powerful with wherever I'm at. I'm going to be the change I want to see.
I love that.
Move or grow?
Yes, move or grow. Grow where you planted or move.
And if you had to leave our listeners with a few takeaways, maybe one or two, from our conversations, when everything you said, what would it be?
It would be this: you're not lost, you're not broken, you're not too old, you're not to this, you're not to that. You're just untrained. And what we know about the brain and what we know about the nervous system is that you can train your brain and you can train your nervous system to be what you want to feel. So you're not you're not lost, you're untrained. So go and train yourself. Put in the reps. Put in the reps. I am testament and you are testament to what you have done with what you were dealt.
So you can train until you're mentally fit.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. I've learned so much, but it's also such a beautiful, I think there's a duality to you. You know, you've been so many things to so many people, and the pivot is so inspiring because it just shows people that if you are not happy where you are, you can move, and that's what you did. You moved, and now you're growing in a way that your daughter like now emulates and like and looks up to you and has all these sub-stacking habits. And it's so beautiful because a lot of the times you just feel like these are the cards that have been dealt, and we lean into those cards instead of like dealing them differently.
Oh, I love that.
And instead of shuffling them again. But then the cards that you have been dealt don't have to define you, and we are proof of that. If I have to think of every single thing that has gone wrong in my life, I could have responded in so many different ways, but I chose to respond in a way where I'm not going to let them define me.
Yeah.
And I continue to move so I can grow. But I think everything starts with being still enough to actually realize what is going on within your life. So thank you for reminding us of that.
Thank you so much. You know, just I love that you always tap into your future self. Like even when we were talking earlier, you speak a lot about your future self, and I think if we can think about our future self and then put in the habits to get the action to get to that future self, we're on the right road.
Yeah, it all starts with just taking the
Yeah.
step. Zoreda, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, the nuggets from the 80,000 thoughts a day and how you can choose to reframe that if you want to, the sub-stacking of habits, because I think we live in a very chaotic world. And one thing I didn't want this podcast to be, honestly, was a how-to podcast, because I find that it's not always practical to the chaos of the world. But the sub-stacking, for example, has been such a great tool into mindfulness. You know, it's a great pathway to mindfulness where I can do it. You know, with my matcha, I can close my eyes and actually be present in that. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, for sharing your courage and your story. I'm truly, truly grateful to have you here. Thank you so much. And to our listeners at home, I'm really curious to see what you learned from this episode. And if you have any questions for Zoreda, I would be really keen to find out more from you. Join us next week again. Is it next week? Yeah, next week again on Mindful Mondays. And we're going to have a different guest. But again, the goal is the same, to be mindful, to be conscious of who we are, but also holistic wellness. And to Zoreda's point, to be mentally fit.